Number 10 is the Followers of the Apocalypse. The Followers of the Apocalypse started off as a small tribe in Boneyard in New California, but they came all the way from Boneyard, New California to the Mojave Wasteland, and they set up in Freeside. And led by Julie Focus, they're one of the only factions who truly mean well. Their goal is to make sure that the Great War never happens ever again. And that's a very noble cause, and they have no enemies in the Mojave, and they also really had no enemies in New California. Now, they are also very powerful because they negotiate and have pretty good power, even in the living hell that is Freeside. So that's why they deserve the number 10 spot on this list over factions like the Powder Gangers, who make only enemies, and though they took over NCRCF, are not powerful enough to do anything that is actually meaningful in the Mojave. They'll get taken down by people like the NCR inevitably. There's more power than you think in being the good guys, because if nobody wants to take you out, you can get all the power you want uncontested. And of course, Caesar's Legion wants to take them out, but Caesar's Legion wants to take everybody out, so what's the point in that? The Great Khans are a shell of their former selves. After the Bitter Springs massacre, the Khans were broken down. They had their wives, their families, their children, their elderly murdered by NCR snipers of 1st Recon, and you can hear about the story from Boone. However, before Bitter Springs, the Khans were a force to be reckoned with. They assaulted NCR citizens and had many, many members. Obviously, they can't hold up against a direct fight with the NCR, which Bitter Springs proved, but who
Something else you
can?
wanted?
They were able to do whatever they wanted unless the NCR had to go completely against them, which is real power in the Mojave Wasteland. They also have power in New California, just like the followers of the Apocalypse. Fun fact, the NCR and the Great Khans had similar beginnings when they both came out of Vault 15 when they had to leave it. Vault 15, I think, was a control vault, and they both came out and formed completely different tribes. The Great Khans, however, made too many enemies, and that's their weakness. But they will negotiate peace with the NCR. Well, some of them will. And that's why they deserve to be the number 9 most powerful faction in the Fallout universe. Master's Army had the potential to take over the entirety of post-war America. They were a large group of smart super mutants who worked together under the leadership of one evil but smart super mutant, the Master. The Master's Army would have taken over all of New California if it weren't for the Vault Dweller. Now, the Vault Dweller was able to shut them down, but remember, the player characters are the ultimate power in the Waste, and any of the player characters can easily kill any of these factions, even the number 1. The Master's Army is super powerful just by their men, because super mutants are way more powerful than regular humans. Their weaknesses, however, are 1, they want to kill everyone and turn them into super mutants. So they make 0 good guys, and if any group works together to stop them, they have no chance, but they want to. Nobody wants to make friends with the Master's Army, except for the Children of the Cathedral, but they're really weird. And then the other weakness they have is that they're sterile. They aren't technically sterile because they can just keep breeding humans and then turning them into super mutants, but technically super mutants cannot breed, so they are sterile, and that's a big weakness of the super mutant army. However, since they were so powerful, they definitely deserve to at least be the number 8 on this list. They are the first real faction on this list that was joinable or killable. They're not like a small faction like the Great Khans and the Followers of the Apocalypse are, so they definitely deserve the number 8 spot. The West Brotherhood of Steel was wrong. They were wrong when they started to live underground at the Lost Hills bunker, instead of living above ground with the rest of society. They were wrong to not allow new members, which makes them sterile and weak in numbers. They were wrong to send people who wanted in to their deaths at the Glow. They were wrong, and you find this in New Vegas with Veronica's story. Veronica's story revolves around why the Brotherhood is wrong and why they need to change if they want to outlive the rest of the factions in the Mojave. But the Brotherhood was right. They were right to keep tech away from people who can't handle it. They were right to be strong in said tech. They were right, and yet they were wrong. They still deserve the number 7 spot, however, just because of the tech they call their own. And though they're weak in numbers, they're so much stronger in tech than every other faction in the Fallout universe in general, except for the Enclave, which is why they deserve the number 7 spot on this list. The three families of the Strip are led by the mysterious man, Mr. House. Robert House has many Securitrons to call his own. He negotiated peace with the NCR and the three families of the Strip. Their strength is in his smarts. Mr. House knows the NCR and the Legion will murder each other during the second battle for Hoover Dam, and his plan is to pounce when the NCR and the Legion least expect it. However, House is easy to kill, and his only army is Securitrons, which makes him weaker than the NCR. The NCR knows they can kill him, but they know that will make them weak versus Caesar's Legion, so they choose not to kill him and instead negotiate peace. Robert House is a super smart man, which is why the three families have any power at all. However, he relies on you to find the platinum chip for him, and he relies on you in a lot of ways, not only to assassinate President Kimball, but also to do a lot of other things like negotiate with the Boomers and kill Caesar himself. So Mr. House is very weak, but he's super smart, which is why he has power in the first place. And that's why he deserves number 6, and also because he's more powerful than every other faction. So he's easily able to slide in at number 6 on this list. The Institute's power relies on one thing and one thing alone: the synth. The synth is way more powerful than the Securitrons that Mr. House owns for one reason and one reason alone. Synths are humans, and because synths are humans, then they think like humans. And since the Institute can create humans at a rapid pace, that means that they have the potential to have the largest army in all of Fallout. But they make too many enemies, like every faction is their enemy. Even the Minutemen, who are like the most peaceful faction ever, they're still enemies with the Institute. Plus, they get blown up really easily because the reactors. The Caesar's Legion is a crazy faction. As Veronica says, they're the biggest group of rapers and slavers in the Mojave. But since they have so many people, and since they have a sort of style like the old Roman tribes had, they're actually pretty powerful. Plus Caesar, given he's a complete jerk and he can't do anything in terms of moral good, he is actually really smart. He knows that democracy will not work, just like it didn't work in the pre-war. But he also does not realize that democracy is still the best hope for the people of the Mojave Wasteland, not selling them into slavery, which basically is making everybody in the Mojave their enemy. And that's a bad thing. You don't want to make enemies to become a powerful faction, and Caesar's Legion makes enemies left and right. But they somehow managed to rival the NCR. Yes, the NCR, the largest army in post-war Fallout. They managed to rival them because they have good leadership and they use their army. They make the most out of every soldier. They all have great armor and great tech equipped with them, better than the NCR at least. That's why the Caesar's Legion do better than the NCR when it comes to things like taking over the Mojave and taking over tribes in the Mojave. When I say that the Enclave is number 3, I'm not talking about that Enclave in Fallout 3. Heck no. They were weak and they hid underground just like the Brotherhood in the West. I'm talking about the Enclave in Fallout 2. You know, the ones that kidnapped Vault Dwellers and put them in FEV just like the Master did. The ones who did whatever the heck they wanted just because they wanted to see what would happen. Yeah, those guys were extremely powerful because they had a ton of tech and they were the first real faction to emerge in the Fallout universe. They did whatever the heck they wanted. And they did it just because. They had no reasoning behind anything they did, which was why they were so cool. But they were so powerful. And the best part about them is that ranger who screams at you and tells you that you gotta put your power armor on or something. That's so freaking awesome. The Enclave are awesome, but they're also really, really powerful. In fact, they're the third most powerful faction in the Fallout universe. Excluding the veteran rangers, the NCR has the worst tech out of almost any faction, probably better than the cons, but still, they have awful tech. However, the NCR has the largest army and the most land in all of the Mojave. They also have a stable government and lots of citizens. Their government is similar to that of pre-war factions, which is funny because all the people in California are Democrats. But they're still much more powerful than Caesar's Legion, because they have a stable government, whereas Caesar's Legion has Caesar. When Caesar dies, they'll die. They're just destined to die when Caesar dies because they have nobody else to appoint a leader. Yeah, Leonius could lead them, but Leonius would not be a good leader, as they say. Caesar says it himself that he would never be a good leader. But the NCR has a democracy where they vote for their president, which is actually really, really useful for surviving throughout the post-war America. They're destined to win the war, as Shoddy casted a whole video about who would win the war. The NCR will win it as long as they wait. They just need to wait for Caesar to die and for Caesar's Legion to die out, and the NCR will win. And that's a lot of strength. Plus, they have the most numbers, as I mentioned before. They're definitely the second most powerful faction. Why aren't they the most powerful faction, though? Because there's another faction that lives in Boston who terrorizes the streets and can do anything they want. That's right, it's the Tunnel Snakes. Just kidding, not the Tunnel Snakes. The Tunnel Snakes aren't a real faction. The real number one, though we are number one, is the East Coast Brotherhood. And if you know anything about Fallout, you already knew this was coming. The East Coast Brotherhood is like the Goliath of all factions. They have the best tech, by far. They have the Brooklyn. It's a flying headquarters, pretty much. Don't mind the flying army right there. But they have the Brooklyn, the flying headquarters. They can produce T-60 power armor at a massive rate. They have Liberty Prime, the giant robot that can kill anything. And honestly, the East Coast Brotherhood is just broken. You know, there's no one who can possibly kill them. They have numbers, they have tech, nothing can outcounter them. Nothing can kill them. And honestly, I don't like this faction. I don't think that this faction should be allowed to be this powerful. But Bethesda doesn't really know how to make a good Fallout RPG. They don't know how to make factions that are balanced. And so they just made the Brotherhood completely overpowered, and they will wipe out the pre-war But yeah, and that's why the Brotherhood are the most powerful faction. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Did I disagree? Did I leave out a faction? It's like the most powerful faction. I didn't even put on this list. Make sure that I know in the comments.